Hey, what's ready? Welcome back to News Dose, and yeah, Sony is seemingly copying Xbox's homework, and I say that as a great thing. I know some people might scoff at that, or, they might brag about who came up with said idea first, when truthfully that really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, as I always say, competition breeds excellence. The reality is that all of these different companies learn from each other's ideas, and yeah, they might tweak things here and there once they implement it themselves, but that is the importance of competition, and it's why that I continuously champion it. It's better for consumers because we get better products when they push each other through competition, and we are going to get into all of that today. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go get right into things, though, starting off with the Steam Deck. Now, this is actually one of my favorite devices. There are more powerful PC gaming handhelds by this point, and, if that's what you prefer, then, hey, that's great. Do your thing. But SteamOS, in my opinion, makes a massive difference. The Steam Deck truly feels like a console experience. You just turn it on, and if you want, you're good to go with Steam's massive library of games. But at the same time, it is still in the early days. All of these PC gaming handhelds are still in their infancy stage, and that does include the Steam Deck as well. Now, I view that as a great thing, though, because that also means, for as good as it already is, technically, it could still get even better. And while I'm happy to say that it just did, they just fixed one of my biggest gripes, being how you download games. They just posted this announcement, which reads, "Today we are adding a new feature to Steam Deck, enabling it to complete all active downloads in a new display-off low power mode before going to sleep. This feature is enabled by default when Steam Deck is plugged into power and can also be enabled on battery power in settings, then power." So, there you go. Finally, we're going to be able to download games while the display is actually off. That seems like a simple thing, but it's actually very important, especially for something like the Steam Deck OLED. OLED technology has improved a lot over the years, but it still doesn't necessarily seem like a good idea to download a game, let's say, overnight as one such example, and then have your display on with a static background. That just seems like you're asking for trouble, so I'm really glad that they finally added this feature. Now, we also got an update for Battlefield 6 as it continues to light up the charts. It still is one of the most played games on Steam, and that's for a very good reason. According to Alinea Analytics, they estimate that it's already surpassed 10 million units sold across all platforms. However, they also predict that it will not overtake this year's Call of Duty. They said that Call of Duty's dominance extends far beyond Steam and the PC market, which is something that I have brought up in the past. I know a lot of people got really excited when Battlefield overtook Call of Duty's concurrent high on Steam, and that is impressive. But Call of Duty does have more of a console-centric fan base, where I'd argue that Battlefield is the opposite. Even still, though, 10 million is still incredible, and I think that this is a great first step at putting Activision on high alert, because even if it doesn't surpass this year's Call of Duty, this is still momentum that could put them on edge, especially if this year's Call of Duty is once again poorly received by fans. If Activision continues to test their fans' patience, you never know. With Battlefield on the rise, things could get very interesting, and hey, that's a beautiful thing, because once again, competition breeds excellence. Whether you prefer Battlefield or Call of Duty, you should still root for the opposing franchise to have success, because that also means that Activision and EA will work harder to appease their fans. Now, we also got news from Nintendo, as they apparently have big plans for the film industry. Of course, they have Super Mario Galaxy planned for next year, and then the live-action Zelda movie for 2027. Interestingly enough, though, this is just the beginning, as Nintendo's president said that they have plans to release movies on a regular basis from this point forward. Of course, the last Mario movie was a massive success, so I don't think that that necessarily comes as a major surprise, but you can see here from this slide that they did tease 2 unannounced movies. Now, there's currently no timeline, But just considering that they're claiming to have a regular release cadence, I mean, it is very possible that they could have something planned for maybe 2028 and then possibly 2029. Now, that's definitely not confirmed, but what I'm more interested to see is what exactly are these unannounced movies. Now, we have heard rumors about a Donkey Kong movie in the past, so maybe possibly that could be it. And I also wouldn't be shocked if they're already planning a third Mario movie within maybe the next 3 or 4 years. Either which way, though, it's pretty cool to see Nintendo evolve their franchises to an even broader audience thanks to these films. All right, now let's go and talk about PlayStation and how they're seemingly taking a page out of Xbox's book. And I really view this as a great thing for everybody, just from top to bottom. So what's happening here is that some new interesting symbols for PlayStation have been discovered through a data mine. You can see here posted by Amethyst where they said new symbols will be added soon, website and tool, but here are some new nice features from PlayStation. Yes, some are old, others are unseen. A kind of echo mode, PlayStation 5 PC games, and then lastly, cross-buy. Now, I will get into these symbols here in just a moment, but if you're unsure if you should trust this person, well, Bilbo-kun from D-Labs, which has an incredible track record, did verify that these symbols are in fact legitimate. Now, keep in mind that none of this is available yet, and things could always change in the background, but this does essentially confirm that Sony is at the very least testing these ideas behind the scenes. And this is pretty significant depending on what all of this actually means. Now, maybe we're all wrong, but what this seems to suggest and how people are taking it is that Sony is planning to implement their own Xbox Play Anywhere program. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's really one of the most consumer-friendly options that the industry has to offer. Basically, you can buy a supported Xbox Play Anywhere game digitally on Xbox or on PC, and then you'll have access to that said game on both PC and on Xbox. It even allows you to carry over your cloud save so you can play between the two seamlessly. Well, based on these symbols, it kind of seems like maybe Sony is planning to do something similar to that, or at least that's how people are currently viewing these symbols. Of course, they are increasing their PC outing, especially when it comes to their live service games, but I will say that there is a key difference between Xbox's PC approach and Sony's. And I'm not talking about day one releases. What I'm talking about is that as of right now, Sony doesn't have their own PC storefront, whereas Xbox does. And I point that out because Xbox Play Anywhere doesn't actually support Steam. It's only for their own PC storefront because Steam is completely controlled by a different company with a completely different licensing system. So, hypothetically, if Sony is planning something like this, then I'm curious to see if maybe Sony also has their own PC storefront in the pipeline. Now, that's just speculation on my part, but I don't really see any other way to implement a cross-buy feature for PC and PlayStation unless Valve makes some kind of exception for Sony, which I don't believe that they will. So that's where some kind of PlayStation PC launcher would come in. But either which way, I am curious to see what happens with all this. I mean, if they do find a way to implement a PC and PlayStation cross-buy system, then that really would be fantastic news for gamers. Now, one more thing before we go, though, because PlayStation did, in fact, announce a new feature today, and this is specifically for the PlayStation Portal. Yeah, I know not everybody necessarily loves this device. You know, it is a streaming device, but it has been very successful for Sony, and because of that, they keep improving it. I myself also like this device. I've talked about that various times on the channel. I've used it quite a bit myself, pretty much ever since they fixed its micro-stuttering problem. But yeah, you can see here where they announced that cloud streaming officially arrives on PlayStation Portal today with new support for digital PS5 games in your library. This means, as they said, PlayStation Plus Premium members can now stream select digital PS5 games from their own library. At launch, thousands of PS5 games support cloud streaming, including blockbusters such as Astrobot, Borderlands 4, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Fortnite, Ghost of Yotei, Grand Theft Auto 5, and Resident Evil 4. So in other words, cloud streaming will no longer completely rely on what's available in their subscription. Now, to be fair, I mean, you still have to be subscribed to PlayStation Plus Premium to access cloud streaming, so you're still going to have those games as well, but you'll now also be able to play games that you own digitally that might not be available in their subscription service. And that's a really cool thing. I mean, if you think about it, you no longer have to buy a PlayStation 5 to play PlayStation 5 games. You could technically buy a PlayStation Portal along with their subscription and then just simply play PS5 games that way. So that's actually a cheaper entry point, but of course, a lot of that also relies on your connection and how well you can handle something like latency. Playing games natively will always be the better overall experience. But I think this is still a very cool option, and it just goes to show you what Sony is cooking up. They are opening up the PlayStation ecosystem in various different ways, and, well, that does include cloud streaming as well. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode, but until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.